worship pastor, worship leader. I know Bob Coughlin also talks about how, what really is a worship leader anyway. Really the senior pastor is probably the true worship leader of the church because he's leading the community. Or Jesus himself is really the worship leader. And on and on. I could keep talking here, so I'll let you chime in.
Well, a couple of things that are probably side notes, but if you look at the Psalms, you look at the Psalms of Ascent. There's maybe 14 or 15 of them that are songs that were sung as as folks would come for the Passover. They would march up into Jerusalem, right? And so we're not looking into a diary. This isn't one person's thoughts. I mean, these are songs that were led and sung by thousands of people. And specifically, the Psalms of Ascent are sung by thousands of people marching together. And man, I love that image because I think, worship leader, all the things that you go, man, what are the right titles? What is all this that we do? I just go, all I know is that there's a long history of people going somewhere together, singing songs together. And by the way, they were songs that were local to them. I mean, these aren't, again, the Psalms, I think for many years, I just viewed the Psalms as like a diary. Like this is one dude's, we're kind of peering into like one guy's, he wrote this down, maybe he sang it in his closet, you know what I mean? And it's like, no, the majority of them are not just some guy's diary. They're the voice for a community, a large group of people. And presumably that person, in 74 of the instances, David, but in the other instances of the Psalms, the other 76, that person, Moses wrote Psalm 90. I assume that he probably led that song in some fashion. You know what I mean? So worship leader, church musician, Christian, I don't know. I don't even know how to go there with all the labels and stuff. I just know, man, you and I have it's a pretty cool thing to walk in a long, long line of history, all the way back to the Israelites marching, all the way back to the Jewish people ascending in Jerusalem. We got a long history of people singing, worshiping together, and being led. That's pretty cool. As you and I talked some about the intersection of, I always just call it this kind of intersection where maybe there's no traffic lights and there's just this big collision. You have the idea of art, and I think for many of us, I talk to a lot of guys who are on staff at a church and they go, man, I feel like in some ways I've suppressed the artistry in me. And I relate to that. I just go, yeah, it's a weird thing, man. I can see where that happens because so much about what we do in the context of the local church is about dying to us, right? It's not for our fame. It's not for our name. And man, I'll just confess to you right now, I haven't always gotten that. I've kind of tended to look out for my own name. That's the name on my records. That's the name on the t-shirts I sell. And so, man, that's a sticky place for me, and yet, so how do I die to myself and still honor God with these abilities that I believe sincerely are not an accident? I don't think you and I know how to strum a guitar, or folks listening know how to play a piano, or my friends Jamie and Jeremy who live close by, man, they are the most amazing painters. That's not an accident. So them dying to themselves doesn't mean doing that in a crappy way or doing that in some kind of subpar way, right? That's a big tension, right? So I think, if you look at it as an intersection, you got three things that collide. One of those is this idea of you and I as an artist. And the other one really that's coming from this angle is you and I as a worshiper. Not even as a worship leader, musician, whatever you want to call those.
Right, not that. Just life unto the Lord, just walk with God, yeah.
How does that collide with art? And so how does that, these gifts that you've been given, how do those mix, right? I wish I had a lot of answers on that. I mean, really for me, I think just the realization that actually existed in the life of David. As you and I were chatting earlier, David was good, right? I mean, the dude could play. King Saul is saying, there was several instances where King Saul is on the battlefield, and he most likely has a big tent set up, and he's getting ready to lead these guys into battle. I don't know if he actually led them. I mean, probably set back as his men marched and fought. But he's saying, I want a concert tonight, and I want David, go get him, bring him to me, let him play his guitar, in that case, his lyre or his harp. I want that guy because he's the best, And I always just imagine him as like James Taylor. You hear James Taylor like picking on the acoustic. I just imagine like, because King Saul would say it was soothing to him, right? So I assume he was fairly chill. He had like this picking thing going on. He was good at what he did. He was an artist, right? And yet, so much of what you and I know about David is him as a worshiper, as an honest, just like, I'm going to lay it all out there for God. I've sinned. I've doubted. I celebrate you. I trust you. I mean, all these things kind of get poured into his Psalms. So he was an artist coming from this side. He was a worshiper coming from this side. And then for you and I, and for many people listening, I mean, I think the third part of that intersection, I always call it a three-way intersection, a three-way collision. The third part of that really is the idea that we make a living off of this. And that there's an income derived off of art and worship colliding. That's a weird thing, and I think that's for us just to pray through. And I think when it gets out of balance, here's what happens, and this is why I describe it as a collision, because when it gets out of balance and art takes over, all I care about is just being great. All I care about is writing a great song. All I care about is you hearing a great record. All I care about is me reaching a level of success as an artist that would bring me some kind of, fame and money and whatever. And that happens, that happens to all of us. I would imagine most of us go, yeah, there's moments I write songs and I just want them to be great because I want to be great, And so I don't think being great is bad, but I think when that becomes our motive and that comes out of whack, yeah, that doesn't work. I think when commerce overtakes what we do, and we've seen this in the areas of quote unquote Christian music, whatever that means, but like music that has been under this umbrella, when commerce drives that, it's just all about, kind of what our buddy Wesley emailed earlier. It just becomes all about what sells. Hey, produce what sells. Let's make some money. We have an industry. We have commerce that needs to happen here. When it gets out of whack, that's kind of what happens. The only other thing, and I say this very cautiously, but because I think worship is the most important aspect of this. But what I want to say is that you cannot worship God as an artist by saying, I've died to myself, and by dying to myself, that includes the abilities that God's given me. I do believe we die to ourselves in the sense that this is not about you and I. This really is about honoring the God who's given us these abilities. But I think we honor him well, and I think this tension kind of holds true and holds steady when we say, God, I want to honor you with this. So I want to write a great song and a great melody. I want to dive into scripture, dive into life. I want to live a life that I have something to say, not so that I can sell 1 million records. If I do, that'd be fantastic. I wouldn't mind. Neither would you, right? I mean, it would be great. But I want to do so because you somehow get glory and honor and fame for this, And I'm not always there. I'm not always there. And so I want to be clear that the worship side of that collision is clearly the most important. But I want to make sure that we don't just diminish the other two, that we don't just go, you know what, as a worshiper, I will never make $1 from this because I've died to myself. And I think God, God's giving you these abilities, and it's okay for you to make an income off this. I hope you do it honestly. I hope you give some of that away. I hope that I look at my own income and go, am I responsible with this? And I think God's going to open up some opportunities for you as an artist that are going to increase who you are and what you do, right? And so lastly, is all of that happen because we tend to ultimately worship God with every aspect of our lives. And so I hope that gives you some insight of what I've kind of had to deal with in my own life as these three things have collided, and I've had to go, hey, what's most important here, and how do I balance these things?
Yeah, it's very good. And as you're talking, I'm just thinking of just reminded. I don't know if it's the Lord just putting it on my heart or not, but it's just the idea that our whole life, like you said, is worship. So that third part, is obviously the most important. And then if that's number one, then your art and then the way you handle money and the commerce side is also worship. But I'm just thinking of like leveraging our whole life, whatever our life is, leveraging it for God's fame.
Yeah.
And that's really the main thing. If that's not happening, then
dude, that's That's a good way to put that, because music is an amazing thing when you tend to view life like that, and you want to go, I want to leverage these abilities in a way that is God honoring. That doesn't, that can get very, very specific and practical. And what I mean by this is, I can't tell you how many emails we get that go, hey, can I use your song in a video that I'm doing for, like literally yesterday at camp for disabled kids, Yeah, yeah, you can use that song all you want. Hey, can you guys come play a benefit for us? How do we use what we do? And then in the context of this church, on a very practical level, like how do I utilize and leverage these gifts that's honoring to the body? So whether that's leading worship in a large setting or playing, I mean, we literally, one of the most amazing, most spiritual things I've ever done is play music for a good friend who was dying, right? So it's my friend Sarah, in the last hour of her life, they wanted some very specific songs and hymns sung over her with her family surrounding her. That's not an easy, that was one of the hardest things I've done. And that has nothing to do with me making money or selling records. And yet it really, I had something that I could honor God with and honor her with. So when you view it like you said it, that changes things, man. And you go, man, God's given me something here. I don't have to sit here and hang out in the corner and go, how in the world do I figure all this stuff out? And how do I wrestle this stuff down? And go, man, yeah, I could actually leverage some of this for God's glory in ways that I couldn't ever imagine. So that's good.
Well, I think the tension though is just how to live there,
Yeah.
because it's so easy to just easily lapse into the your fame and not God's fame kind of thing. But
Hmm.
excellent, man.
Thank you, brother. Bless you, man.